to Brannick's Reviews. This is part 2 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe tie-in graphic novel review series. There's a mouthful for you to begin with. Now, the first part I looked at the Iron Man tie-in for the first film. And in this one I'm going to be looking at the second part of that. So this one is obviously, the first one was a tie-in to the first film. This is a tie-in to Iron Man 2, the film that came out in 2010. This one's called Public Identity. Again, like the first one, it's a bit of a collection of things. It's not just all one story. And to be honest, it's fairly padded out with interviews and whatnot, kind of thing. Maybe just over half of it is around about graphic novel, comic book items. The rest of it is interviews with people, which is interesting. But at least you know what you're getting anyway when you kind of flick through it. But I'll begin anyway. The basis of this story is that it bridges the gap between Iron Man 1 and 2. I say story, all of the stories that are contained in it bridge the gap. So none of it is kind of set in any other point in time. So the first item in it anyway is Public Identity. That's the main body of it anyway. It's a 3-part deal, and it's collecting Iron Man 2 Public Identity 1 to 3. That's the name of it. It's written by Joe Casey and Iron Man 2 screenwriter Justin Theroux, and it's illustrated by Barry Kitson and Ron Lim. So that's the first part anyway. And I'll kind of go as to what happens anyway. So it picks up directly at the end of Iron Man 1, where Tony Stark announces that he is Iron Man. So you can see it kind of recants that story anyway. This is what the artwork looks like. So it kind of cuts to decades ago anyway, and it shows some of the involvement that Howard Stark, that's Tony Stark's father, had with Anton. Is it Anton Vanko? He was the father of the Mickey Rourke character from Iron Man 2, the bad guy. Because if you've seen Iron Man 2, I'm kind of going to assume you've seen Iron Man 2, so you know what's kind of going on. Part of the story is the Mickey Rourke character that becomes Whiplash. His father worked with Tony Stark's father decades before, and his father kind of sold out to the communists basically. And similar to what Obadiah Stane did in Iron Man 1. So it kind of shows a few little things between those two anyway, between Howard Stark and Anton, and it kind of shows how Anton is into making money basically and doesn't really kind of care about anything other than that. So it kind of has a little bit on that anyway, and then it kind of cuts to the present day, and you've got Iron Man, Tony Stark kind of having fun on a yacht kind of thing. It kind of cuts, there's a few little things, the storyline moves fairly quick. It shows a few things like, 1 minute Iron Man, Tony Stark's kind of having a bit of a laugh, next minute he's kind of conducting missions on his own. Because obviously what happened between Iron Man 1 and 2, Tony Stark's kind of achieved world peace basically, as how he puts it, he's successfully privatised world peace, as he says in the second film. So you kind of get to see a bit of that in this. There's a few little missions that he goes on, and during this, the military's kind of a bit perturbed by this because they want kind of control over it, but Iron Man's doing his own thing, as you saw in the film, basically. And his friend, James Rhodes, Rhodey, that is also the War Machine later on, he's kind of in an awkward position, like he is in the film. Again, it all ties in with what's going on in the film. He's a bit of an awkward position because he's got to he's a military liaison to Stark Industries, but at the same time, he's got to answer to both the military and Stark Industries. So you get to see a lot of that in this, and like I say, you get to see a lot of what Stark's doing for the military as well. Anyway, the story kind of progresses a bit. I'll kind of go through it a bit more. What else do we have? He goes on a few missions, he goes back to the Middle East, and there's a few other things. The issues with the 10 rings is still actually going on in this. That's a lot of what is going on, and there's some bits in this where you just kind of flick through pages within a matter of seconds. It's just basically artwork, some of the bits of this. So it's you can get through this fairly quickly, maybe read it within 20-30 minutes. if you're taking your time, basically. This is the next page. You can see again. There's not really much dialogue in it. It's all artwork. It's not all like that. It's just bits. Because then it does kind of pick up after that, and it then cuts to, you've got Senator Stearns, which was the guy that you saw in Iron Man 2. That was the one that was at the congressional hearing where kind of chewing out Tony Stark in the film and saying that he has to hand over the Iron Man suit. Of course, this is all set before the events of the second film, but that's who the guy is, played by Gary Shandling, who is also going to reappear in the next Captain America film, which is out in a couple of weeks. Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Senator Stearns reprising his character's reprising his role. Anyway, so Senator Stearns is talking to James Rhodes, and then in walks Thunderbolt Ross, General Ross from The Incredible Hulk. So it's kind of cool that you get to see him in this as well, because he kind of isolated that character just to the Incredible Hulk film that came out in 2008. You didn't see much of him after that, which is a bit of a shame really, because he's a pretty good character. So anyway, they're kind of building. It's kind of like it's some kind of flying, like a kind of a warship, but without. I don't know quite how it flies. It just kind of flies. A bit like Iron Man's suit crossed with like a big Apache helicopter, basically, that Justin Hammer has built, and that they're going to be putting into test mode, but then they kind of put it into live combat anyway. So this was kind of the military's way of kind of trying to create something that would rival the Iron Man suit. Now in Iron Man 2 you do get to see that Hammer Industries, Hammer Tech, was trying to build the Iron Man suit as well unsuccessfully, but you don't see that in this. You just kind of see this big thing that they've built, they kind of put it into action. So it picks up in part 2 of the story anyway, and there's some Somali pirates that Iron Man's kind of blowing up. You kind of get to see that a bit. So again, he's kind of doing his bit. It cuts back to a point in the 60s, I think it's the 60s anyway, where Howard Stark's father, in a flashback here, you get to see where the Mickey Rourke character's father, Anton, gets arrested for having dodgy dealings. And it cuts to a few years later, so again we're having a bit of a flashback to, you get to see the relationship between Tony Stark and his father, Howard Stark, and kind of ties in with the film Iron Man 2, because you get to see that obviously what Iron Man, Tony Stark, is saying that they didn't have a very close relationship. So you kind of get to see that in this. And Jarvis as well, the butler. Now in the original comics, Jarvis was a human being, but in the films, Jarvis is just like a voice on he's a computer basically. And but originally Jarvis, according to these comics, Jarvis back in the 60s or 70s, I guess this would be the 70s, was actually a human. And it kind of suggests later on that the Jarvis computer is like a simulation of this old butler that he used to have when he was a kid. Because he does actually say, he again refers to it, he says, every time I'd visit from boarding school, you were the happiest to see me. And Jarvis is like, I don't recall that, sir. So obviously it's like a computer simulation of the butler that he used to have when he was younger. It's kind of weird. I don't think they established it in the film anyway. If they did, I mean, I've seen the films plenty of times and I never picked up on that. So I don't know if it's just established for this. Anyway, moving on a bit. So this equipment that Justin Hammer has made for the military, they kind of roll it out, and I'll kind of move on a little bit, and you get to see it in action. And then Iron Man again cuts to him back in the Middle East, and he's kind of testing his equipment. Story-wise, not really much else. It shows that S.H.I.E.L.D. is monitoring all this as well from above on some kind of weapons satellite. I think it shows them on a satellite, and then it cuts back to General Ross, and they're actually deploying the Hammer Tech equipment, and I think it crashes in the Congo somewhere. Anyway, it kind of you get to see it being launched anyway from this stealth bomber type thing, and meanwhile Stark's talking to Captain Rhodes, and the military, while all this is going, to realise that the Hammer Tech machine has actually crashed in the Congo. So that's then down to Iron Man to kind of sort that out. So it goes in the next issue anyway. That's the third part of it now, and the final part of it. And it cuts again another flashback to when Tony Stark is a teenager. More stuff about the relationship with his father, and it kind of shows how his father, well, both his parents died fairly quickly, well, suddenly in an accident. So nothing really all that. It's interesting, but it's kind of going over what we already knew from watching the film. Anyway, Iron Man, Tony Stark's talking to Rhodey and Pepper, and then he finds out about this hammer tech equipment that's crashed in the Congo. So he flies over there anyway. The military are all kind of panicking along with General Ross. And so Iron Man goes over to the Congo and then extracts the pilot anyway and kind of rescues him. You kind of see there's a bit of more action there going on. And again, there's not much dialogue during all this. So it goes on, more action with that dialogue. Well, there's a little bit of dialogue. He rescues him. General Ross, Thunderbolt Ross, fairly pissed off, as you can see. And they have a bit of an exchange between the two of them because Tony Stark didn't blast the hell out of the guys that were holding him hostage, and Thunderbolt Ross is basically saying, well, you know, you're supposed to go over there and you're supposed to kill these people. And Tony Stark says, well, that's not what I do. And he also says, if you put any more people in jeopardy again, you know, there will be consequences. So you can kind of see that's kind of how it ends anyway on that. So he flies off, and then it just kind of ends with S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of saying Tony Stark's not quite ready yet, you know, for what we have in store for him, you know, the Avengers basically. But he's getting there, so that's how it ends anyway. Now after that, there's a few little stories. There's a segment called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think there's three parts to this, but they're not very long at all. Only like a few pages each. And these were, from what I understand, unpublished digital comic. Oh, it's two digital comics with Nick Fury, Black Widow, and Agent Coulson, Phil Coulson. So there's not really much to it anyway, but just basically kind of some of the stuff that S.H.I.E.L.D. gets up to, battling the Ten Rings, and how some of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are supposed to be there kind of monitoring what Iron Man does, how he operates, kind of thing. And they're also supposed to engage him as well, just to kind of see like how he'll respond. And they kind of say, well, actually, you know, Iron Man's a good guy, actually saved our lives. And Nick Fury's kind of pissed off because he's sort of saying, you know, you're supposed to open fire at him and kind of see what happens. So he's kind of winning them over anyway. It kind of shows, the point of that story is, you know, Iron Man's a good guy, and the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are kind of getting a sense of that. The next part, we've got something with Phil Coulson. He's kind of breaking in a new agent into the team anyway. It's fairly dark. Some of the artwork is fairly kind of dark, and it's not quite as good as the earlier stuff that I read in this. But there's quite a lot of action without a great deal of dialogue in it. Then it goes on to the Black Widow, and this was quite good actually, because in the film obviously they introduced the Black Widow played by Scarlett Johansson. They introduced her as like an undercover character posing as a legal paralegal, whatever, and that works for Stark Industries, and her name was Natalie Rushman. So you kind of get to see how she starts at the company and how she kind of gets into a position where she gets to meet Tony Stark, because realistically somebody like that in her position wouldn't really be around Tony Stark all that much. But it shows how she kind of manipulates a way to get into that position. She actually poisons one of the higher ups. I say poisons, doesn't like kill her or anything, do anything like really bad, but she kind of puts something in a drink that makes her throw up. So then, later on, when something needs to be taken to Tony Stark, there's nobody available to do it because the person that would be doing it is actually sick, so therefore she gets the assignment, so she gets to go to Stark's home, and it picks up exactly at the moment in the film where, if you remember how her character is introduced when Tony Stark is like in a boxing ring with his bodyguard, Happy Hogan. So that's it finishes there, it's to be continued in the film. So that's it anyway. There's a lot of other stuff in this. There's a lot of interviews, that kind of thing. I'll just kind of quickly go through, but as you can see, it's all kind of written on the side with bits about various artwork about the people that write these stories and sort of backgrounds and stuff like that. So it's all quite interesting anyway, but if that's not really what you're into, then you might be a bit disappointed by the latter, maybe third of this graphic novel. It's got a lot of stuff about the extremists graphic novel as well, which obviously was incorporated into Iron Man 3, so it's quite interesting anyway. That's my review of that anyway. I hope I haven't rambled on too much, but there's a few other issues I'm going to be doing. The next one is going to be the one that tied in with Captain America the First Avenger in 2011, and it's called First Vengeance, so that's going to be coming up in the third part of this review series. You can see the first review currently at brandxreviews.com, and maybe in the next few days, few weeks, I will have probably uploaded the other reviews as I go through these. So if you check the website anyway, and the YouTube channel, which is accessible through the website, you will see what's there and what's available. Thank you very much for watching.